Welcome back, Dr. D. I'm excited to talk with you today about the intellectual virtue of originality.
Hey, Kate, how you doing?
Yeah, let's kick off. What does originality mean? I don't even know.
Let's talk about originality. It's more and more as I do my research in all these different areas, and I'm reading everything from the free energy principle and how that has an influence on biological systems of all types, and then how it leads to this notion of predictive processing, which has become sort of the essential unifying principle, if you will, of intelligence of all living things. One of the principles that predictive processing advocates is what they call analysis by synthesis. And analysis by synthesis means that the human brain, as all organisms, are trying to adjust and adapt to staying alive in a dynamic environment that is constantly changing, that they have to develop within their physiology a model of the world. They have to become basically a model of the world. And it's this model of the world. Of course, the causal structure of the world is what we're trying to model, because if we can model the causal structure of the world, then we can predict what's going to happen next. And predicting what happens next enables us to maintain the integrity of what we are as living things. Because there's this well-known force that pervades the entire universe, and everybody knows what it is. It's called entropy. And entropy is why eggs break and they can't get put back together again. It's why when you drop a wine glass and on the floor, it can't get put back together again. It's because everything tends toward disorder. And living things have this unique capability of maintaining their integrity in a world that tends towards disorder, right? In an entire universe that is tending towards disorder. So how do we do that? How do we sort of fight that process? And we all know what that is, because we all feel it deep in our soul, that somehow or other we're aging and pieces of us are beginning to fall apart, as I well know here at 65, going on 66 years old. I would love to turn the clock back. And we do our best, and we have all kinds of analgesics and cosmetic and other kinds of things that we use to try to turn the clock back on our wrinkly skin and, the various organs that are giving way. In my case, it's the liver, for a well-known reason, right? Because Dr. D tends to have a little bit too many cocktails from time to time. If we could turn the clock back on that. So it turns out that living things are by nature original, that we originate the niche in which we're able to thrive as living organisms. And we are constantly doing it. It's a never-ending process. And for some of us, of course, that niche is fairly well constrained to our, I see that you come to me from the same room each time we meet, and that's a very familiar routine room, as do I. When we meet, I'm in the same room. I know where all my books are. I put them in a particular order and so on. And so I've created my own niche. And so originality is, a term that is easy to misunderstand, because sometimes we think of it, in terms of, maybe whimsy or just kind of creating artistic little doodads or things, but it's actually an essential part of staying alive. The ability to originate your own niche that enables you to continue to fight the forces of entropy. And every single living thing needs to do that. And that basically revolves around the creation of structure, right? So some type of structure that is predictable, that is organized, so that we only kind of, in a world where there's an infinite possibility of ways that I might express myself. Infinite. Most of which will lead to my ultimate demise, right? If I went outside and said, well, let me see if I can climb up on the roof and jump off. Well, you know what? That's not a good state of being, right? Because it's probably going to lead to my demise. So we create these niches, and some of us create niches that are highly constraining, in the sense that we have a very limited set of routine behaviors that we're going to be involved in. And of course, this is typically the vocational path that people choose, right? So they choose a vocational path. They just repeat the same kind of, routine exercises every single day, practices to earn a living. And then you have entrepreneurs who are a little bit more adept at creating structure where it didn't previously exist and creating a venture around that. But all of us have the capacity, and it's an innate part of what we are as living things. And some of us honor it and try different ways to express it and try to create niche environments where we can live and have more opportunities to express that originality. And it's done in myriad ways, as you well know, from everything from the artistic expression that is generally thought of as being linked to originality, to even scientific investigation and entrepreneurship, which requires originality as well. So it's a very important intellectual virtue.
It sounds like there's something paradoxical there, right? You need like a structure as a foundation.
Yeah.
But you can't have so much rigidity in that structure that you can't see outside of it, right? So like,
Yeah.
Are there any other, I don't know, foundational skills or exercises or components you think are necessary to build originality out in folks, like the character of originality?
Yes, absolutely. And I think as I've conducted more and more investigations of originality and its really its origin as the soul of living things, right? And of course, we're amongst the most complex of all living things on the planet that we know of course. And one of the beauties of being a mammal, right? And we're sort of this phenotype of Homo sapiens, which of course is part of the mammal family, but the mammals, generally speaking, are mobile creatures, right? So we have arms and legs, we can move about, and we're endowed with this wonderful emotion that Jaak Panksepp has declared to be something he calls seeking, right? And he in his work on the seeking emotion, which is really the basic exploratory emotion that drives us to see what it is that might be around the corner, right? Is something that in fact is the essence of joy in human life. So if we can understand that we need to have a niche that we create that is sort of the foundation of routine in our lives, that should not be the full boundary of the niche that we create. However, if we want to be joyous creatures, we should also begin to explore the boundaries of our niche and see if we can't push it out in many ways, right? Because that is the essence of joy. And of course, the pushing of the boundaries means that from time to time, we're going to be surprised by things. And it's the pushing of the boundaries of our niche, I think, that is going to enable us to be, and people talk about inclusivity and diversity and things like that. It's the pushing of our niche boundaries that enables us to embrace people that are different than us. Right. And if we can begin to get a sense of our, of our place in the universe, which of course, from time to time becomes more obvious to us. They just launched this beautiful new satellite that has the greatest telescope that we've ever invented to look at the cosmos, the history of the cosmos in ways that are, I mean, some of their images, if you've seen them, are just absolutely remarkable. And I look at these things sometimes and they say, well, that galaxy over there, is like 15 billion light years away, and you think, okay, what's a light year? A light moves at, 180 miles per second or something like that. So how many miles in a year? It's like, are you kidding me? It's that far away. So when you think about, this tiny speck that we're on this cosmos and the kinds of conflict that we create amongst ourselves, you think, boy, there must be some way for us to expand our minds in a way that's going to help us embrace humanity as a whole, and begin to live together in a more harmonious way on this planet. And I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to stop looking for it, but I don't know what it is, but it clearly seems as though we have we certainly have the capacity to originate in a niche. What we need to develop in greater capacity is the ability to expand the boundaries of our niche. And that is the essence of originality.
It's interesting. So I'm listening to you and I'm always think back to education, right? So
Yeah.
our institutionalized high schools, right? They're really low context. Most of the
Yeah.
kids spend a lot of the day in the information setting, like turn to
Yes.
page 52, open your books, write this thing.
Right.
I read that after World War II, when we kind of forced Japan to take on our institutionalized high school model.
Yeah.
They took a lot of things from the model, but they have these large high school settings, and the students are in a cohort and they stay in one classroom, and their teachers rotate to them. So
Oh,
when you're talking about, having your books in order and how all of those structures help you be original, because you've got your niche. That to me seems like a much better setup for students to have originality, so they are in an environmental context that's familiar every day.
yeah.
It's not totally disruptive every 45 minutes changing from that context, but then they have people rotating into them with new ideas, new
Wow.
exercises, new tasks for them. So there's the structure and the
Well, that
looseness
sounds,
there at the same time, right? So it's interesting flip from how we run our high schools, where kids get up every 50 minutes to change total locations, teachers, subject areas.
yeah.
Wonder if
That's
there's something
interesting.
to that. I
Yeah.
don't know what entrepreneurship looks like in Japan, but I just wonder if there's a correlation there in expression and originality.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I like that, because I do believe that humans have this, like I said, Panksepp has clearly identified the seeking motivation that is a part of almost all mammals, right? And of course, that's a necessary part of life. Is you think, well, if I create this niche where I kind of just kind of sit down in a very quiet way, that's the most likely way for me to preserve the integrity of my life, right? Is I don't make any waves out there. I don't try to do anything. And that way I preserve myself. In fact, maybe I should just go into fetal position and sleep all the time. But the problem is we need to eat, and we need to have, nourishment and other kinds of things. So that means we have to go out and find it. And that means that we have to have this seeking motivation that kicks in every time one of our major, nutritional drives says, I need something, right? Your body says, I need something. But the point is, we can learn to appreciate and enjoy the seeking motivation, even in the absence of those homeostatic kinds of drives and things that we have, right? And so, yes, of course, we need a foundation of peace and comfort and security. Every living thing needs that. But at the same time, the true source of joy comes in exploring and understanding the niche that we've created, right? And the larger our niche becomes, right now we're peering back, as I mentioned, to 15 billion light years, away of a galaxy. And of course, that means we're peering into the past, because that it took that light 15 billion years to get here. So we're looking at something, that is totally ancient. So we're expanding our niche. I think your point about teachers rotating in rather than students moving from one classroom to the next, that sort of exemplifies what we're talking about. It creates that comfort zone where you have this stability, but at the same time, you're being exposed to diversity at the same time, right? And that to me is something that makes a lot of sense. And so you look around me, right? And these are all my teachers, right? Every one of these, and they're all different. And today I'm reading something that is completely new to me by a book by a guy named Robert Lanza, The Great Biocentric Design, right? And it's about consciousness in a quantum universe, and the need for consciousness to create reality, right? So this is the analysis by synthesis kind of concept that takes away the subject-object distinction that has been a part of Western philosophy since, basically Plato invented this dualism and took human beings out of nature to some extent. And now we're finding more and more scientists through quantum physics and the weird kinds of realities that have been discovered in quantum physics, that consciousness, in fact, is an essential part of the creation of the universe. So not only do we sort of, as mammals and a phenotype that needs to create a niche that is nourishing, but as life itself, we are creators of the universe as a whole, and that's kind of an interesting twist on things. So you talk about originality. We've originated the entire universe by virtue of being alive. Yeah.
I'm thinking about advice you have for leaders of organizations. I mean, how do you foster that without, you need part of your job, part of your everyday becomes routine, right? There's that, the things that just need to be done, but you don't want to squash that originality.
Yeah.
Every single person has a right for that. You know what I mean? Like a right to that seeking and a need for it. So how do you balance that as a leader?
Let's take a look at, what it means, something different for everybody, because we all have a different capacity for originality. And some of us are more comfortable on the boundaries of our niche, the frontier, if you will, and some are not. Is going to require that we also, not only sort of honor, on the periphery, the diversity that we encounter, but at the same time, then try to encompass a new unity that enables us to come together as human beings, right? And I look around and I think, okay, we have all these various cultures on the planet. Isn't it wonderful? They all have the different dress codes and different ways of behaving and everything. But at the same time, we all laugh, we all have language. And there's some commonality there, and we all want to live. We all want to raise families. So how can we find ways to sort of settle our differences without this constant struggle? And maybe that's not going to happen. Certainly not in my lifetime, right? But as you get older, you witness that struggle, and you think about it in holistic terms of my short time on this planet hasn't led to any kind of advancement in that struggle. I mean, it continues to this day.
Mhm.
And what bothers me more than anything is when I see humans unable to come to some kind of unified vision of what kind of world we want to create. And so I think that is the ultimate originality that we need for the future, is what kind of world do we want to create?
Mhm.
There's a lot of different ways to go about doing it, but I don't think we have any idea what kind of world we want to create right now.
Agreed. So are there recommendations you have for folks, that want to dive deeper into concepts of originality?
Yeah, read stuff that is going to kind of shake up your thinking a little bit. And, that can be something in poetry. It can be something, like I said, in quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is going to shake up your idea of reality in a major way. There's a great book. It's called Helgoland, 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 by Carlo Rovelli. And it's about Werner Heisenberg went off to a remote island called Helgoland to try to think about how to reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity, and came away from that with a whole different perspective on consciousness and reality. That is now really the basis of fundamental science, right? So you think about science being this hard, realism and, sort of particles bashing into one another. Well, now we realize that consciousness and the observer, if you will, is an essential part of the creation of reality. Without venturing outside of science. It used to be, well, that's mysticism if you think about something like that. No, it is a fundamental part of modern science. And so we have to try to wrap our heads around that, and maybe, like I said last week, if we know what we are, perhaps we'll know better who we are. Maybe wrapping consciousness into the construction of reality is going to give us a better idea of what we are, and therefore who we are, and perhaps create some kind of unifying narrative that will enable us to, keep from annihilating ourselves.
Let's hope so. Sooner than later.
Yes.
We definitely need to have more conversations like this happening on a larger scale.
I hope so. Yeah, it's kind of quasi-philosophical, scientific. I call it scientific poetry. Because I do believe that science, as it's practiced, at universities and stuff, tends to be this big, massive, expensive project, but it's extremely social. and has many implications for better understanding, what we are. And we need to bring some of those ideas into more of a popular setting, so people can begin to embrace a new idea of what we might become as human beings.
Thank you. You're pushing the boundaries in my brain every day, so I appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. We will catch up next week.
Great. Thank you, Kate.